Good afternoon. I am Z. Scott, president of Chicago State University. I'm delighted to welcome you this afternoon to our first installment of the 2022 Black History Month Presidential Lecture Series. I'd like to take a moment to recognize and thank our sponsors for this year's series. As lead sponsor, Discover Financial, and our associate sponsor, Chase. Both institutions are providing ongoing support to the university, including their sponsorship of this lecture series. I'd also like to welcome and thank today's speakers, Dr. Brian Clay, and our student moderator, Corville Russell, for joining us this afternoon. Finally, I'd like to thank each of our guests who joined us here virtually for this moderated conversation. In alignment with our campus Black History Month theme, Our Stories Continue, the vision behind this year's presidential lecture series is to highlight the incredible accomplishments and contributions of Chicago State University alumni. This month, you will hear from three amazing Chicago State University alum who have gone on to be leaders in their professional lives and in their communities. At Chicago State, our students are our strength, which is why we've extended that, excited that each of this year's conversations will be moderated by a current Chicago State student. Today's conversation will be moderated by Corville Russell, a senior majoring in biology with a minor in chemistry. Let me tell you a little bit about Corville. Corville transferred to Chicago State University after receiving his associate degree with honors from Chicago City Colleges of Chicago. His scholarship has been recognized during his time at Chicago State, and in 2021, he was awarded the prestigious Shineback Scholarship. Corville currently serves as president of the CSU Biological Society, and he also lets us know that no one travels in this life alone, including as a student at Chicago State. And he counts 4 Chicago State professors as his faculty mentors. And those are Professor Molly McDonald, Professor Joyce Ghana, Professor Melvin Daniels, and Professor Felix Ribas. Corville also engages in scientific research as a student here at Chicago State. He is currently researching bat coronavirus under the tutelage of Professor Molly McDonald. After graduating, Corville plans to attend medical school and acquire an MD, PhD. He also plans to become a musculoskeletal radiologist. Joining Corville for our conversation this afternoon is Chicago State's alumnus trustee, Dr. Brian Clay. Dr. Clay is a physicist. You can pronounce it for me, Dr. Clay. Physiologist?
Yes, that's correct.
Physiatrist?
President Scott,
Yeah.
Physiatrist, you got it.
So as a physiatrist, Dr. Clay is a muscle, nerve, and bone expert who treats injuries and illnesses that impact how the human body moves. Born and raised in Chicago, Dr. Clay has been fascinated by science since childhood. After earning his undergraduate degree in biochemistry from Chicago State, he completed medical school and concentrated his focus on physical medicine and rehabilitation. During his internship and residency at Northwestern University's McGaw Medical Center and the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, Dr. Clay was named chief resident. He has a passion for helping others. As a result of his Dr. Clay constantly exploring innovative practices and techniques, such as genicular nerve ablation and a non-surgical procedure for relieving knee pain, and the use of stem cells and regenerative medicine treatments for musculoskeletal conditions, Dr. Clay is known as a highly regarded physiatrist. I'm close, I'm getting close. So I also wanted to let you know that after today's conversation, you will have the opportunity to ask questions for about a 5-minute period of Dr. Clay. So please join me in welcoming Corville Russell in conversation with Dr. Brian Clay. Thank you.
And thank you for the warm welcome, President Scott. Let's get right to the questions. Dr. Clay, do you mind telling us about your journey that led you to Chicago State University?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just also like to give a big thank you to President Scott for this opportunity. I always relish the opportunity to come and speak to not only to students interested in medicine, but just students in general. And particularly in light of this month when we celebrate our current and past accomplishments. So big thank you to President Scott. So yeah, my journey, it's an interesting one. So I am a native of Chicago. I actually grew up in West Chesterfield, which is a community about, it's in the area. It's essentially kitty corner to Chicago State. So, I grew up around 4 blocks away from the university. And so the university has sort of always been a fixture in my community. And, obviously, like any kid growing up in Chicago, I went to Chicago public schools. And, it was during that time when I began to sort of develop that fascination with the science and mathematics, as Dr. Scott alluded to earlier. And so that was sort of the nidus for, pursuing a career in medicine. I really developed that at a very early age. I did spend a year after I graduated high school at Morehouse College. And while at Morehouse, my journey sort of took a change in that my dad suffered a stroke. And while I was away at school, I, had determined that it would probably be more prudent for me to spend more time at home close to family. And therefore, the subsequent matriculation of my undergrad career commenced at Chicago State thereafter.
It's very admirable that you came back to look after your father. Thank you for sharing that with us. Do you mind sharing some of your favorite memories that you made with us at Chicago State University?
Yeah, there's so many. So one interesting thing about my time at Chicago State was it was sort of a renaissance period for the university. It was around the time when the dorms were constructed. So prior to that, Chicago State was, in my mind, at least more of a commuter type of college in the area. And I feel as though once the dorms were constructed, it sort of became more of a classic residential community on the university. So that was an exciting time. The student union was newly reconstructed. There were many different events that were occurring at the university within the community. And some of my fondest moments, rather, is just the camaraderie between the students. We were a small group of individuals. Many of us were from Chicago. Many of us transferees, such as yourself, and obviously I transferred as well. So it was just a good time in terms of molding that foundation and building relationships that some of which have lasted to this day.
I gotta agree. I have made quite a few relationships that'll last me for a lifetime as well. How does Chicago State prepare you for success in your career and in your life?
Well, again, Chicago State is, I think we have to look at Chicago State in terms of the context of the university. It's nestled in the community, and it's a wonderful resource for the community, particularly for students who may come from backgrounds that are not typical backgrounds. And so actually experiencing the environment at Chicago State, you really get this sense of sort of a family sort of environment. For instance, some of our class sizes were so small that there may have been up to a dozen of us in one class, all sort of interacting and learning in an interdisciplinary fashion amongst one another. And I felt like you didn't necessarily get that at some of the large universities, like the University of Illinois, for instance, where you have larger class sizes. And I think that sort of small, intimate setting was paramount in allowing me to absorb that knowledge and to sort of be able to free flow in the classroom, bring up different ideas, and really get that one-on-one tutelage from wonderful professors there. So that's that went a long way in terms of developing my professional foundation.
I do agree with you there. I do have a lot of relationships with my professors that have definitely benefited me in the long run. Now, you've gone up to accomplish so many great things. I want to know, you're returning as an alma mater to the Board of Trustees. What led you to make such an important decision to come back for that role?
So yeah, I'd always wanted to give back in some way to the university, whether that be via mentorship, via just serving in some capacity for the university. And I was presented the opportunity to join as a trustee in 2017. And at that time, I had previously had not had any other interactions with the university, and I saw it as a good opportunity to jump back in the fray, get back involved, see if I could, participate in functions that the board oversees, and make an impact in terms of both the present and also the future vision that President Scott has outlined for the university. And I saw it as a wonderful opportunity, and I jumped right on it.
Thank you so much for that. How did you make your career choice?
So again, it's that theme, right? When you're younger and you're trying to figure out, okay, so what's my life gonna turn out to be, right? As an undergrad student. And I think within the university, I was quickly able to find that my path would go somewhere in terms of healthcare or science. And I was very interested in analytical chemistry, in some of the applications of real world applications of analytical chemistry. And I think that my career choice initially took me a little different. I didn't go straight to medicine. I actually, upon graduation, had the opportunity to work for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in the capacity of a subcontractor through Lockheed Martin, which is an aerospace company. And the project looked at particulate pollution in the Midwest region. And I found it as, an opportunity where I could really see how the chemistry and, sort of the real world met. So for instance, my role was to perform analytical studies on particulate air samples that would be taken from sites which were deemed high pollution areas within the EPA. So areas in East Chicago, for instance, areas in Northwest Indiana, numerous areas around Chicagoland, and even throughout the Midwest region. So that actually was my first sort of journey into the real world. And I think that many students, such as yourself, at this point in time, it's sort of a crossroads, right? Do you continue to, sort of go along that traditional pathway to medical school, or do you take time to do something else, whether that be research, whether that be getting real world experience and something that may or may not be related to medicine? And I think that that was crucial in giving me a different perspective when I actually did matriculate into medical school.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of people in the audience right now, especially because a lot of us are graduating, are definitely going to appreciate that response that you just gave us. Did you have any mentors along your career path?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Numerous mentors um, along each step of the way. Even in terms of prior to undergrad, um, your journey is fraught with different individuals who contribute to your success in so many different ways. Specifically at Chicago State, and there were a number of wonderful professors during my time there, but I'd say Dr. David Canis stands out in that he was really a professor who approached me about research. He fostered this sort of underlying interest that I had in doing research, and really served as a great faculty mentor for me while I was at the university. So Dr. Canis, if you're out there, always appreciate you for those opportunities.
Thank you. Can you describe an average workday?
Yeah, so again, as Dr. Scott alluded to earlier, I am a physiatrist. So physiatry, or physical medicine and rehabilitation, is a relatively small specialty within the medical field. It requires 4 years of undergraduate schooling, 4 years of medical school, whether that being a allopathic or osteopathic program, followed by 4 years of residency with the option to do an additional segment of years to subspecialize further. And I chose that career path not initially. When I initially went to medical school, I thought about surgery. I thought about being an ER doc. Those were sort of two of my aspirations at that time. And during my matriculation, again, you have so many mentors that come in and out of your life. And one of my mentors at Shirley Ryan Rehabilitation Institute really sort of urged me to consider musculoskeletal medicine. And it was at that point when I started to look deeper in terms of my whole career pathway, my career goal. And rehabilitation medicine is a field where we treat the sickest of the sick. We like to use the frame or the term rather that we save lifestyles, right? So, for instance, my dad, when he had a stroke, he was under the care of rehabilitation doctors who managed his medical condition as he was improving, gaining strength, learning how to speak, learning how to walk, and those sorts of aspects of just daily activities. And I just found it fascinating that as a physician, you could be a part of a patient's journey from catastrophic injury to, in some cases, complete recovery. And that was, for me, was a game changer. And so as a physiatrist, my day-to-day sort of activities involves basically 100% outpatient clinic. So I see many different patients with various ailments who suffer from arthritis, for instance, musculoskeletal injuries, and many of them are in severe pain when they come into the office. And so I find it very rewarding because every time I go into work on a day-to-day basis, I'm usually faced with some sort of challenging case where I have to sort of figure out a way to get this patient help via whether that be medications or procedures. And it's a very rewarding experience when you're able to effectively manage patients who are in severe pain. So that's what I do.
That. It's because of physicians like you that I'm interested in becoming a physician myself. So I appreciate that response. What would you say to other Chicago State students that would want to pursue a career in medicine?
I think things are changing over time. I think that you'll find the landscape of medicine it's a fluid landscape. For instance, um, in the time when I was applying to medical school, there were many traditional students, and what that means is the typical applicant was someone who had done undergrad, plus minus a year of research, and subsequently matriculated directly into medical school. Well, in this sort of climate, I believe that the stronger applicants do have some of that real world life experience. They have some research, most certainly. So I'd encourage any student who seeking to pursue a career in medicine, look into doing research, and look into building your resume outside of the walls of the university. If I'd encourage all students, if you have volunteer experience, document that, put it on your resume or CV when you submit these applications to school, and just be honest with yourself. You don't go to medical school and become a doctor for any other reason aside from the profession, from the pursuit of being a doctor is about helping patients. And once you can focus on that and have that be your drive and motivating factor, I think the opportunities will find their ways to your doorsteps, certainly.
It sounds like some great advice there. Moving on to the topic of Black History Month. I know it's Black History Month and everything. In the modern time right now, we're having a lot of like racial issues, race matters, Black Lives Matter. How has your race impacted your career?
Oh, absolutely. So, as is the case with many of our institutions, there were times, and obviously in history, where we did not have access that we might have today. For instance, and in 2000, the mid 2000s, when I applied to medical school, just to give you an example, the undergraduate or the average medical university in the United States only had about a 6%, 7% representation of African American students, and this is U.S. And so therefore, our communities are the communities that are at most risk. Our communities are the communities that are the most underserved and that need representation in medicine. And there's unfortunately been a historical mistrust between the medical community and the African American community, and also other communities of color. And in order to bridge that gap and to sort of foster that care that we so desperately need just for basic medical needs, we need to have more of a representation in the field so that we can start to spread some of those tentacles and build some of those networks within our communities.
So you would believe that Black doctors do matter in healthcare?
Absolutely, and it's more in the sense of having a presence, of having a pathway for patients who otherwise may not be comfortable accessing healthcare historically due to factors that I mentioned before, that we're trying to overcome. And I think particularly in our community and in the Chicago and Chicagoland areas, that disparity is pretty profound. The practice patterns vary based on various locations in the area. There are resources that are in some cases not equally distributed amongst areas. And I think that we need to recognize that, and as a medical community, specifically as a minority medical community, we really need to focus on mentorship and focus on cultivating our younger students such as yourself and up and coming physicians who aspire to become doctors, and we need to build mechanisms to help them accomplish those goals.
Great, thank you for that. Could you share your biggest career accomplishment with us?
Yeah, well, you know, I would think in terms of globally, the thing that stands out most is my time as a resident and chief resident physician, where I had the opportunity to directly participate in the education of younger up and coming doctors, some minority physicians, some non-minority physicians as well. I think that experience was very valuable in just my professional development. The opportunity to give back in some capacity, even if that's in a role, let's say, faculty member or mentor. I think that really stands out in terms of what I view some of my biggest one of my biggest accomplishments to be.
Thank you. You've accomplished many things. You're looking to accomplish many more, as always. How does your story continue?
Well, hopefully I continue on a path of prosperity here in terms of continuing to build my practice. And I think in this next sort of chapter in my career, I would like to perhaps build more volunteer clinics. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, there were many organizations where you could volunteer, participate, and sort of give back in terms of donating your time or attending various clinics for patient outreach, just checking blood pressures, for instance, in the community, something as simple as that. So I think moving forward, I'd like to incorporate some of that more outside of my sort of daily hustle and bustle.
And you've given so many valuable tidbits of information during this interview. One question that I wanted to ask is, what advice would you give current Chicago State students?
Well, I would just say work hard in life, obviously. Enjoy your time at the university. This is a time where you have to really build a foundation, build friendships, try to stay present in the moment and absorb all of the knowledge and the camaraderie that comes with being a Chicago State student. And I would always encourage students to seek out your passion and pursue that passion with unabashed vigorousness. And I think that that's probably some of the most important advice that I could give up and coming students at the university.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's all for our questions. If we could, can we go ahead and turn to the audience for any questions that they would have?
So far, we don't have any questions from anyone in the audience. I do have one question of Dr. Clay. You talked about being given the opportunity to give back to the community, including to Chicago State. Why is that important to you personally?
I think personally, we have to have the emergence we have to support our community, and it's vital, particularly in this day and age where in many instances, some of the family structures aren't in place. Some of the resources have been depleted over time. Some of the programs that we have benefited from in the past have since gone away. And I think that we need people in professional positions to help subsidize some of that, some of those losses that we have occurred over the years in terms of changes in policies and loss of resources. So I think it's just vital for the younger individuals and the younger age groups also to see someone ahead of them just, doing what they aspire to do. And perhaps just even that interaction can be the motivating factor for them to also pursue their dreams as well.
Yeah, I have a question for you as well. The road through medicine, as you described, is quite long. You got the 4 years of undergraduate, the 4 years of medical school. Residency can be anywhere from 2 to 4 years, and then that's not including a fellowship on top of that. What did you do to keep yourself motivated through that long journey?
Well, that's a good question, and I think it's important not to lose sight of the end goal. Right. So my motivation was really within. A lot of that came from within. I was really motivated, self-driven, but I did benefit strongly from support. I had numerous mentors along the way, people who I confided in. I asked a lot of questions of people who had come before me, even other medical students who were advanced in their course as I was a student there. So even a fourth-year medical student can be a mentor to a first-year medical student, for instance, right? So it's that sort of matriculation and that process that helps you to stay focused. As long as you stay engaged and as long as you keep your eyes on the prize, so to speak, I think that serves as tremendous motivation for students in pursuing medicine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Clay, and thank you, Corville, for your conversation today. We appreciate both of your participation in the conversation today. Very important to our students to hear from alum who have not only continue to contribute like you do, Dr. Clay, to the university as a trustee, but who also are encouraging our alum and our students to give back, especially to Chicago State that has given you so much. And so we have tape recorded your words and we will use them wisely to encourage our students here today. I want to thank everyone for being with us this afternoon. I also want to thank our sponsors, our lead sponsor, Discover, and our associate sponsor, Chase, for their contributions to our graduate scholarship program. And you're going to hear about the graduate students who will be receiving the scholarships that are being sponsored, that are being sponsored by our sponsors. So again, I want to remind people that this is just the first in one of 3 lectures. We have another lecture that will take place on February 15th. Professor Cynthia Nance, who is the former dean of the University of Arkansas Law School, who graduated from Chicago State with a degree in economics. And on February 22nd, we'll hear from Anthony Anderson, who is the retired executive from Ernst & Young and now a corporate director on 4 corporate boards. So we invite you to join us again for the continuation of our Black History Month Presidential Lecture Series. And thank each of you for coming and joining us this afternoon. Thank you again, Dr. Clay, and thank you again, Corville.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. Thank you.